Today I would like to show you how you can hang your own picture, your own artwork, drawing or painting, and the most efficient way of doing so is to use the wall plug and a screw. I will talk about other methods that I considered, then we'll do a bit of drilling. I will show you the whole process step by step, introducing some cool tricks and tips to smooth the whole process. And then in the end, I will show you how you can repair the wall in the future if it's necessary to do so. So we've got quite a lot to cover. Let's go into it. Initially, I did a bit of research. I went to one of the biggest art stores here in London to find out what kind of hanging solutions they offer. And the conclusion was that they use a hook that you attach to the wall with a nail and you hammer the nail straight through the hook into the wall. So I purchased some of that product and I tried it at home. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for me because the nail broke into the pieces. I had tried multiple times, it just simply didn't work. So then I went to a proper hardware store and I bought some masonry hardened wall nails. And although the nails themselves didn't break, which is a good news, they didn't go quite far enough. And I ended up damaging the wall, which is something I didn't want. Then I pick up the phone and call my colleague and ask, how do I do this? And he said, well, don't be silly. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. The most efficient way of doing this is to use a wall plug and a screw and drill a hole into the wall. Now, you may consider the other methods that I have mentioned. It all depends on what wall you have at home. The key consideration is what kind of wall plug you should use, and I would recommend using a wall plug size 5, which basically means that you need to drill a hole with a diameter of 5 millimeters. In terms of the plug's length, I'll be using the one that is 25 millimeters long, or in other words, 2.5 centimeters long. The wall plug size 5 should support any painting or drawing you're thinking about hanging, unless it's incredibly heavy. I will be hanging this my drawing of Michelangelo's Moses. This is A2 format, it's a standard frame with a glass. I will list all the tools that I've been using in the description below so you can check them out later. In terms of the screw needs to be one size smaller, so it needs to have a diameter of 4 millimeter or 3.5. I would recommend either of those options. I'm actually using a combination of both of them in my own place. Before you start drilling, and this is very important, you need to think about how you're gonna hang up your artwork. In this case, we've got two options. Option number one is to hang it by the top of the frame, and I use this method very often with canvases because they don't have any sort of hanging system within. So the easiest way to hang them up is by the top of the frame of the canvas. Option number two, which is relevant to this frame, is it's got this metal hanger and we can utilize this, and that's what I'm gonna do. But in this case, you need to make sure the screw's head will go all the way through the hole. So I've got two screws at home. I've got 4 millimeter one. Unfortunately, its screw's head, the head itself, is too large for this hole, so that one wouldn't work. I've got a 3.5 millimeter screw which got a smaller head and it will nicely go all the way through, so in that case it will work. Same goes for the screw's length. That will be determined about how deep the frame itself is, so that's another thing to consider. Luckily enough, for the A2 format, the metal hanger at the back is much larger and I can use either of the screws I have at home. So before you start drilling, definitely think about the screw you'll be using. If you have enjoyed this content so far, please give it a like, or you can consider subscribing to my channel. I'm gonna leave an amazing tip towards the end how you can get rid of all the wall plugs super easily. And now let's step through the drilling hanging part step by step. Step number one is to mark with a pencil where you're gonna be drilling, considering what I said about the picture frame earlier. The step number two is a cool trick that I learned, and that is to tape a small bin bag using a scotch tape just beneath the pencil mark, and that way when you drill, all the rubbish will go into the bin bag rather than onto the floor, which will save you a lot of cleaning time. Okay, so let's go into the drilling. I use a normal cordless drill. There is nothing special about it. Make sure it's on the hammer function, so it's on the hammer icon, top speed, and then obviously you want it to be drilling forward. So here are a couple of tips. The tip number one is to pre-drill. I like to minimize the damage to the wall, and that's the reason why I use a smaller drill bit first. So if you're trying to make a hole that is 5 millimeters wide, I would pre-drill it with 4 millimeters first, and then I would use the 5 millimeter to make the final hole. Tip number two is about the hole length. So if you're using a plug that is 25 millimeters long, you want to drill slightly longer holes. So you want to drill maybe roughly around 30 millimeters. That way the screws can go a little bit deeper, and also like the plug will slide in much more easily. The tip number three is to make sure that you drill in the perpendicular way, that your drill is perpendicular to the wall. And that is because if your drill is facing upwards or downwards, then subsequently your wall plug will also face upwards or downwards, and will make it quite difficult to hang your frame or your drawing. Now, because my mark is quite high, I'll have to use a stool to stand on to make sure that I can actually drill in the perpendicular way. Okay, so I'm drilling the hole. I'm using the smaller size drill bit. I'm pre-drilling using the drill bit 4 millimeter wide. And once I finish, it's good to use a screw to get all the dirt out of the hole into the bin bag. And I'm also checking whether the hole is deep enough for our purposes. Now I'm repeating the process with the bigger drill bit, this size 5 millimeters, which is the size of our plug. And again, use the screw, get rid of all the dirt into the bin bag, and check that the hole is long enough. The next step is to clean up. So if you have a hoover like this, if you have a hand hoover, you can use the maximum suction, get more dirt out of the hole. And you can also get rid of the bin bag. You don't need it anymore. The step number 5 is to put in the wall plug. And you should be able to do it by hand, but if it doesn't want to go in, you can use a bit of a hammer. But be gentle, because you don't want to destroy the wall around it. Sometimes what can happen is that the plug might get damaged when you insert it into the hole. It has happened to me in the past. So I'll show you in the end how you can take the plug out. But what it actually means is that the hole that you made is too small, so you might have to make it a little bit bigger. The step number 6 is to screw your screw into the wall plug. I would recommend doing it by hand, because you don't want to damage the screw's head. And it is very likely that you might have to adjust the screw. You might have to screw it in or out depending on your picture's frame. The last step is to hang up your painting or picture on the wall. As you can see, my drawing of Moses is happily hanging on my wall, so it can bring me joy every day. I always like to leave a little gem towards the end as a thank you for watching my whole video. So I'm gonna show you how you can repair the wall. And what you may think might be the hardest part is how to take the plug out of the wall. But there's a simple trick that I'm gonna show you now. All you need is a claw hammer. This is a claw hammer. It's got these two claws at the front. I bought mine, this is part of the IKEA set. And then imagine that my hand is the wall, and I'm gonna place the plug with a screw inside this wall. You might have to screw the screw a little bit further in or out, depending how far it's sticking, and then place the claws from the bottom until it grabs the screw fully. And then we're gonna pull it. We're gonna pull it down, we're gonna lever it out. And by this motion, you should be able to easily remove the plug with the screw from the wall. Now, try to be gentle, because this bit is gonna be touching the wall, and there is a potential that it may damage the wall. So try to be as gentle as possible, but you might have to use a bit of the force. It should work quite well. I have used this in my place on at least 20 plugs when I was redecorating. It worked in every single case. Lastly, you need to buy a product called wall filler. I've got this product called here, it's called Polyfiller. It's a standard product you can buy in any hardware store. And this one is quite a foamy one. And then you need a palette knife like this, or equivalent of a palette knife. You get a bit of the product onto your palette knife, and then with 1 stroke or 2 strokes, you fill in the hole, you seal it, so it will disappear forever. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye for now.